Hello everyone, I'm Greg Otto with FedScoop TV, and this is our IT modernization series, and I'm talking with Dr. Lon Gowan, the Chief Technologist and Special Advisor to the CEO of the U.S. Agency for International Development. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Good to be here, Greg.
So, federal IT managers recognize an urgent need to modernize their legacy systems. What has to change to accelerate modernization efforts?
So it's a really good question, really good point. The modernization, as I've been through several federal agencies, is one of the things that really lacks.
Okay.
And it's not just IT modernization, it's throughout in many agencies. So, but for IT, the simple answer is the things that really need to change, okay? So how do you identify those? Identifying the things that need to change, in my opinion, first becomes IT security. Okay, so we're talking about cybersecurity, protecting the infrastructure. We've all seen what happens when, that's not protected. Okay, information is leaked, people's names, social security numbers, their relatives, all that kind of stuff, what we call PII, personally identifiable information. And so when we look at our infrastructure and deciding what needs to change, those are, in my opinion, the first targets. Okay, if there are weak systems that are antiquated, systems that have older versions of operating systems, things like that, that aren't patched, maybe they're not even audited or monitored well, okay? Being able to identify those first and make the necessary updates with modernization, buying the current hardware that will be more secure, updating, operating systems, whatever it takes, okay? And part of the problem within agencies is the dispersed nature of IT within agencies. And so when you look at that problem, you realize in many agencies there's this thing people call shadow IT.
Right.
Okay. And so how do I identify, and this is one of the things that laws have tried to accelerate, how do I identify where all this IT is? Okay. So in order to update legacy hardware and software and modernize it, you have to know where it is, okay? And so that's a big problem, okay? After you conquer that, you address the IT security issues, that's going to be a big driver. The next thing is going to be, what is the biggest impact on your agency, okay? And different agencies have different needs, of course, because they're solving different missions, right? For some, it's going to be reliability. Okay, this system's not reliable. It definitely needs modernizing. For other people, it's going to be bandwidth and speed issues. So for like within our agency, we have anywhere from, like I say, 80 to 100 missions around the world. Okay, so how do those individuals at those missions get their IT? How do they do that securely? So if you have someone in Africa or someplace and they're trying to reach back to the United States or wherever, how does that done? And can we do that effectively so that their experience isn't, what people experienced, 40 years ago, right? Where you hit a button and you wait 10 seconds, right?
Right.
So those issues are the ones that are going to be the primary drivers. And to get there, you really need to have architecture. So your architecture drives this whole thing. We know so we have our as-is architecture.
Okay.
Okay, so we know where everything is and what it is, right? And then we can lay out this plan for the to-be architecture. Okay, where do we want to be in 2 years? Where do we want to be in 5 years? And by federal law, we need to be having those strategies. Okay,
right.
So that's where we need to go.
So with those strategies, one proposed strategy is this bill that is going to be introduced that would codify Tony Scott's $3.1 billion revolving IT modernization fund. What types of systems would you say are best suited for getting this off the ground and getting agencies started in modernizing their legacy IT?
Right. So that's excellent point. And so let me just say first that the budgetary need is really important in this regard.
Right.
Okay. And so the legislation is still proposed.
Right.
Okay. But I hope it comes to fruition. And then it's important that be balanced across the agencies as appropriate.
Okay.
Okay. Some agencies may need it more than others.
Right.
Okay. But it has to be broad enough that it can meet the needs that an agency sees. Okay. And so I think the federal CIO will accomplish that, but it's important that it be done. Okay. And so the areas specifically again would be IT security. okay? And that has to be the first target, because we are, the federal government is a public service organization. We're protected and required to protect people's, PII information.
Correct.
We're required to protect, security of the United States. Okay, so there are classified systems out there, as we know. Okay, and being able to protect all this, and even if they're not classified systems, there's sensitive stuff in the unclassified realm as well. And so being able to protect all that properly, okay, that's where the security piece comes in. Past that, again, it gets into what is the biggest impact for a particular agency. And so again, it's going to be, some agencies are going to look at that and say, hey, it's my, data center is ancient. The fiber coming into it, or the bandwidth coming into it, is just way too low.
Right.
And we can't even meet our needs. We see people slowing down. So those things and the return on investment related to those things are going to be major drivers.
So you were saying about IT security, but there are some other trends going on right now. There's cloud computing, there's containerization, there's agile development. What buzzword or hot trend when it comes to enterprise IT fits into your plans for what's possible over the next 18 months when it comes to upgrading systems?
Okay, another really good question. So containerization, NASA, when I was at NASA, we researched into that. Ames at the time had a 40-foot container. Goddard at the time had a 40-foot container. And containerized computing, I think, it's kind of fallen off the radar scope in certain areas, but it's an important concept.
Okay.
And this idea that we can take computing now and put it in a box, and instead of replacing one server out of a rack, we can take an entire container and just lift it up, set it aside, drop a new one in its place, plug a couple of cables in, and we're good to go. So that's a powerful concept. And what does that help? That really drives, I think, the cloud computing type of stuff, because you're looking at the Amazons of the world, the IBMs, the Microsofts, and places like this. They can create these data centers, which get into this virtualized concept that we've talked about a lot, and be able to connect up and access systems that other people never could do before. I mean, the average individual can actually go out and do something like that. And so that's very powerful to be able to create that environment. Containers help with that, okay? Because you can just lift things in and drop them out, okay? The other really big benefit with containers is the green technology and the clean technology associated with them.
Right.
Okay? They're making hardware now these days and stuff that take very little cooling. And if you put a container in the right location, okay, as far as climate and stuff like this, and they're even experimenting with keeping them on the bottom of the ocean, right? So I think the sky is the limit there, and I think that needs to continue, okay? So other ones, I think you talked about a little bit, were agile. I think agile has its benefits, okay? Right. If we look at FITARA, for example, it kind of leads us toward this idea of incremental development,
right?
Okay? And one of the approaches for that is agile, which agile is one of the rapid application development methodologies.
Correct.
Okay, and so agile can be beneficial, but it's also kind of a hype term. Okay, and people use it, and it don't necessarily get to the point where it's beneficial. So I think there are areas where it's very useful, and I think there are areas where it may not be so useful.
Right. The application of it is really,
Yes.
really important. Otherwise, just talking about it gets bogged down. One last question. Can you share with our viewers a success story of how your agency has made significant headway in modernizing IT systems?
Yes. So within USAID, like I've said, this topic of cloud computing is really important. So USAID and the CIO at USAID and prior CIOs have moved in that direction over the years, okay? And so that's been, in my opinion, a huge success.
Okay.
Because what does it allow us to do, right? We get into these environments where we need to create basically enclaves, if you will, of computing to do things, okay? And so before, all this stuff was physical, right? And now I